Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? It's Michelle Niza.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Cindy Berry will be on shortly.
Call to order the special board meeting of March 3rd, 2021 at 6 p.m. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance, Tyler.
I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the flag
to the
United
United States of America
and to the republic
for which it
which it
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
one nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we gotta work on the old pledge in unison. Welcome, everybody. Clerk Barry, please call the roll.
Supervisor Echevetti,
Here.
Treasurer Elliott,
Here from my office in Chesterfield Township.
Mr. Supervisor, you are coming to us from
Chesterfield Township Chambers.
Trustee Anderson, Trustee Joseph, Trustee Vosberg,
Present in my home office in Chesterfield, Michigan, Macomb County.
Trustee Demink,
Present from my home in Chesterfield.
and Trustee Anderson or Trustee Joseph.
I would ask for an excuse for Trustee Anderson and Trustee Joseph, and if when they arrive, I'll let them in.
Clerk Barry is here and present from my home studio in Chesterfield Township.
Thank you. Item number 5 is the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Motion by
Support.
Clerk Barry, support by Trustee Demink to approve the agenda. Discussion. Clerk Barry, please call the roll.
Clerk Barry, aye. Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Supervisor Echevetti.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
That's all of us? Oh, okay.
Yes,
Item num-
unless when Trustee Anderson and Trustee Joseph arrive, if you can just let me know and we'll note it in the minutes.
Okay, item number 6. Clerk Barry, please read the item.
Item 6 is a presentation of the master plan final draft to the Board of Trustees by the Planning Commission.
Welcome, Planning Commission. I am going to move or turn my screen sharing over to Rod. Or is that correct? Or Rod and Matt are here with Giffels Webster, and the entire Planning Commission is also here. So I'm going to make Rod the host,
Yes. Okay.
which you are now. Oh, wait a minute. I got to stop my share first. Hold on one second. There you go. You should be able to share now.
Okay. Can everyone see the screen?
Hold on one second. There you go.
Yes, we can see it, Rod.
Yep. Okay,
I
great.
can see it. Yep.
Yes, I can see that.
All right. Before I begin, I don't know if Mr. Miller, did you want to say anything before I start the presentation?
No, I'm sure that you are doing a fine job, Rod.
Okay, thank you. Just want to make sure. Well, thank you and good evening. It's a pleasure to be with you. I'm here along with Matt Wojciechowski, and we're the Giffels Webster planning team that's been assisting the Planning Commission with the preparation of the update to the master plan. This is a project that's been ongoing for about 18 months now, actually. It's kind of amazing how time flies. But if you recall, we had a joint meeting with the Planning Commission and the Township Board to kick off the project. I believe that was September of 2019, if memory serves me correctly. And we've been working diligently with the Planning Commission throughout that time, collecting a lot of, you're going to learn tonight about a lot of public input has been collected. A lot of study has been conducted, and we're pleased to present to you the draft. So I'm going to go ahead and start the presentation. One of the things you'll notice, you're looking at a draft, I think, in your packet of the project and the draft of the master plan. It was prepared in the fall. You'll notice that we are going to be doing some minor updates of things, including the acknowledgements page. And this is an update. Obviously, there's been an election, there's been some changes, and all of those things will in fact be properly noted when the final document is in place. So this is the organizational structure to the plan and includes an introduction. It includes a history section. I think it's important to look back before you look forward. Regional settings, where we stand in the region, demographics, natural features and sustainability, looking at the environmental influences in the township, land use analysis, vision, goals, and objectives, then the land use plan. And then, as you'll recall, we had specific area plans that the Planning Commission had identified that they wanted to kind of drill down a little bit more detail. So we have those. We have complete streets. We have thoroughfares and gateways. We have implementation and action, which is very important. Once you make a plan, you want to make it reality. And then an appendix. So that's the structure of the plan. Just going to hit some of the highlights on some of the background information. Community planning history. I think it's important that we have a portrait of Philip Dormer Stanhope, who's the 4th Earl of Chesterfield, which is the namesake of the township. We also dive a little bit into the history of the region and how that history has influenced Chesterfield Township. And I think one of the interesting facts in here is about Gratiot Avenue, which I know many of us think of as being one of the key spokes coming from the hub in downtown Detroit, and more specifically Campus Martius. But actually what happened with Gratiot is it had to be realigned. It doesn't perfectly line into Campus Martius. If you've been downtown, you know Gratiot does not, in fact, intersect into Campus Martius. In fact, Monroe was to be the street that would extend out through this particular part of the region. But the road had to be realigned because of a couple of reasons. There was a cemetery, there was an orchard, a couple of things on the brush farm in particular that impacted that. So the road was shifted a little bit. So just kind of interesting facts that influence how we got to where we are today. And then regional planning, obviously looking at regional influences, like Selfridge obviously is one. What other communities are doing along your border in terms of planning? We took a look at that. Demographics is another important component. We tried to make this as graphic as possible, make it easy to read rather than burdening you with lots of words, for example. So one of the really interesting parts of the type of analysis we did is this data is actually online in a separate interactive form. And you can see up in the very top right of the slide, there is the Chesterfield Township infogram. And this is the link to it. And if you just link on this button in the draft, it will actually take you to that infogram. And all that data is then presented. By the way, I just got a notice that Trustee Joseph has joined the meeting for the minutes. So that I just got that notice.
Yeah, I apologize for my punctuality. Had a little login problems, Mr. Arroyo. Thank you.
Hey, glad to have you here.
Excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt. Trustee Joseph, and you are remoting in from?
Thank you again. Sorry for the disturbance. I'm remoting in from my home in Chesterfield.
Thank you.
Okay. So anyway, that interactive link to the data, I think you'll find very interesting. It could be very helpful also to share potentially on your website for economic development purposes to kind of give a nice snapshot and profile of the township. So once again, if you, this little button here on the right side or on the left side on the page demographics that's got the circle, if you click on that in the draft PDF, it should open up your browser and take you to that interactive version. So that's a nice feature that I think can be useful beyond just the master plan itself. And here's some more demographic snapshots, getting into some of the employment information as well. Also looking at inflow and outflow. I think it's very interesting to understand how during the day, people that leave the township and then those that actually don't live in the township that come to the township for work. And there's some data related to that as well. Existing land use is important to understand. We've got a couple of key things. We have a map showing development trends where new projects are being located. We also updated your community facilities map showing where your police, library, fire station, school properties, park boundaries, good information to have. And we used that when we were doing the complete streets plan, looking at linking particular non-motorized paths. And then public input is very important. As part of this process, as you recall, we did kick off with the joint meeting. We got some good information, did a SWOT analysis looking at strengths and weaknesses and opportunities and threats. And then the Planning Commission held 3 separate open houses, 2 of which were held at the Township Hall, and then another one was actually held at First State Bank, and we ended up with good participation, good information, a lot of comments from the public, and that was something that was very helpful to the Planning Commission, because when you're planning, before you plan, you really want to understand what is important. And some of the key things we got out of that was that residents are looking for housing to raise a family. We have a group like that. We have another group that's looking, that's lived here a long time, that wants to continue to be able to be here. And if they want to downsize, they want to be able to stay within the township. So this whole concept of aging in place and then adding senior housing is important. There was pretty strong support for non-motorized pathways as well. When people were asked where they'd like to spend money, if they were going to put money on certain improvements, a lot of support for more pathways, more sidewalks, more non-motorized connections. And then the preservation of natural resources was also something that was very important. Chesterfield is blessed to have many amazing regional quality level and national quality level natural resources, and the preservation of those is important. And then certain pathways were also critical. We asked the participants to give us their suggestions for where they want non-motorized pathways, and we use that to develop the complete streets plan that you'll see a little bit later. We also did a survey, so anyone who couldn't attend these open houses had a chance to do an online survey. So that was between December 2019 and May 2020. It's a 28-question survey that went out, and we had 254 participants in that survey. After that process was over, the Planning Commission started to work on goals and objectives, and they developed a vision statement. So the vision statement is that Chesterfield Township seeks to provide a safe, healthy, and dynamic waterfront community by promoting, 1, a mix of residential housing types that provide for a wide variety of residents of all ages and abilities. 2, a balanced economic system that will provide a diverse tax base, an appropriate mix of uses, and long-term stability for the economy and the workforce. Environmental stewardship through partnership, preservation, education, and action. Number 4, reliable public facilities and services in an efficient, cost-effective manner. And then finally, a transportation network that provides safe opportunities for users of all ages and abilities and includes a robust non-motorized transportation options. And then the Planning Commission developed goals and objectives by topic areas. These are 2 examples where you can see environmental stewardship and you can see public facilities. There's a overriding goal, and then there's more detailed objectives that are attached to those. So the next part of this is the actual land use plan itself. We talk about community character because I think that's important to define what's important within the community. You've made a lot of efforts to build a quality community, and we tried to celebrate some of that and reflect that in the plan. We also started looking to future development, particularly future retail and mixed use development, because there's a strong desire for that. And we talked about the concept of hamlets. Hamlets is an old term, but it really describes something that can have a modern application. And that's a very small development area, much smaller than a village, but it could even be just at a crossroads where you have buildings brought up closer to the road. You have enhanced walkability and some placemaking, a reason to go there and actually spend some time. And you can actually create some unique areas within the community and actually reflect a development pattern that's been around for a very long time. So, we'll talk a little bit about some of those as we go through the planning process. And then we have the future land use map, and within the plan, it actually goes through and describes the changes from the previous future land use map. So we're going to kind of drill into some of those as we go into the area plans, but this is the future land use map. And one of the things that we're happy with is there's also a residential density plan. So this provides you with an opportunity to really understand the residential density recommendations. And they're done in a range. And the reason for that is that the master plan is a general long-range guide. And as the Planning Commission and the Township Board ultimately start to look at zoning decisions, you may find that within some of these sub areas, there may be areas that's more appropriate for the higher end of the range and more areas that are appropriate for the lower end of the range. And you may seek some development that has a mix of within the range. So we like providing that density range in this particular instance to provide for that type of guidance. You'll also see there's a number of mixed use areas in the really bright kind of the bright red or almost like a pinkish red color. There's several of those, and those are areas where you may have a combination of residential and non-residential development in these more walkable formats in some of these hamlet areas where you could see an interesting mix there. So one of the things that we are trying to do is coordinate all of this with water and sewer. And I know your engineering group is busy analyzing the density plan and looking at sewer capacity and the like. And one of the things we were asked to do as part of that effort is to conduct a forecast of new dwelling units based on this density plan. And we did that and came up with approximately 12,400 new dwelling units possible with the full build out of the community. So that we're not talking about something that's 10 years from now or 20 years, but even farther out when the community is fully developed to the potential based upon this plan. And what that means is the total build out population would be somewhere in the neighborhood of 76,700 people. Seems to be a pretty good number, particularly when you look at some of the townships to the south. You know, some of them are a little more dense. There's some examples of over 100,000 within some of the townships. In Chesterfield, given a lot of the environmental features and some of the rural areas in the Northwest, depending on what happens with those, and a lot of those are planned to remain at larger lots. That'll keep your density down in that area, where in other areas you'll be potentially seeing some uptick in density where you have mixed use and you have some more creative forms of residential. So that information is helpful in terms of planning for long-term capital improvements. We also introduced a new concept for an area, and Matt's going to dive into this, I think, a little bit more detail when he starts talking about some of the area plans. Blended residential. Blended residential category is an idea where we're trying to introduce some more housing options and even some housing options that are more attainable. You know, I think one of the things we hear from a lot of communities is kids grow up, you raise a family, they get educated, they go to good schools. A lot of them end up going to colleges nearby or somewhere else in the state. And then they end up, when they try to come back here, they may have a problem with affordable housing, or maybe they can't find a job. But affordable housing or attainable housing is something that is an issue. So by providing for more of a mix of housing types, we can hopefully do a couple of things. We can provide housing for the young people that want to stay here, and then also for people who don't want to maintain their larger home and they want to downsize to something, they can stay in the community by having something more attainable. So we're looking at with blended residential, the district would look like a single family residential district. The units would all be constructed to have that appearance, but there would be sprinkled in a strategic way some two family and maybe even some limited quadplex units, as long as they're designed to look like single family homes. And that way you're gently adding some density, you're adding some attainable housing within some neighborhoods. And this is just for a couple of focus areas where we're doing this. And Matt's going to go into that, but I think it's an exciting concept. I think it's an option to provide house scale units in a way that provides for flexibility and reaches the housing goals that you have. So we're now going to go into the area plans. I'm going to talk about the first one, the 23 in Gratiot, and then Matt's going to take you through the rest of these. So 23 in Gratiot, as we know, is a very challenging area. There's a lot of activity, a lot of traffic, a lot of commercial activity. It's an exciting spot. It accesses the freeway, but it's also has its issues. We did some access management evaluation. We looked at traffic crashes. At the very lower left there, you can see the crash diagram showing all the crashes on 23 Mile Road between Gratiot and the westernmost I-94 ramps. And you can see it's pretty much everywhere. And it ranks pretty high. The intersection of Gratiot and 23 is 34th in the region, the SEMCOG region. And then the segment between of 23 Mile Road between Gratiot and the freeway ranks 44th in terms of crash frequency in the SEMCOG region. And most of that is due to driveway spacing. Driveways are much closer together than the MDOT guidelines, for example, would suggest if you were to build them brand new today. So we did an access management plan looking at the opportunity to maybe consolidate some driveways, and that's something that could happen over time. But we also looked at the opportunity for placemaking. This area is one that is primarily automobile oriented, but we think there's an opportunity to introduce a more walkability so that you can create a place where people might want to actually park their car and spend some time walking around. Along 23 Mile here, at the very bottom of the picture is where the Lowe's is. There's actually some open areas, including the far away portion of the parking lot, as well as the back end of some of the retail and restaurant uses, where there's an opportunity potentially for some liner retail buildings to go in and potentially allow those closer to the roadway and actually put some streetscape amenities in here and possibly some wider sidewalks and create something of a walkable place. One of the things we're finding is that parking demand is going to change. It's already starting to decrease. We expect that with ride sharing opportunities, with autonomous vehicles and the ever changing transportation environment, the parking demand will continue to drop. And what that means is it's going to open up the possibility of using some of these empty parking lots for more economic development, and what we like about that is potentially you can introduce some walkability and some placemaking into an area that's been more auto dominated. So this is something that would have to obviously be explored. It would require public-private partnership. It would require some changes in zoning, but it's a concept. That's what the master plan is all about, identifying some ideas and some concepts, and then setting the stage for exploring those in more detail as part of implementation. Another area that we looked at in this particular corridor was the actual intersection of 23 and Gratiot. We're looking at different ways to see if that can be improved, to make it more people-friendly, to introduce some more landscaping, and find ways to introduce placemaking into it. And this is the southeast, or excuse me, the southwest corner of 23 and Gratiot, and I think we all know it pretty well. On the left side, the existing conditions, there's a lot of driveways. There's a lot of basically individualized buildings, canopies and the like. And we showed a precedent image on the right side of how that might change. And what you see is a consolidation of buildings with several users in one building. And then you see an open corner that actually has the placemaking elements, including the opportunity for outdoor dining and for maybe some art, maybe some additional landscaping, and maybe even for some identification of the township in terms of signage. There's a lot of things that could be done, and then parking is moved to the back, and then driveways are consolidated, and potentially the users that are currently there could be incorporated into this scenario. It doesn't mean the users have to change. It just means that the form of development might change and the placemaking opportunities change. So once again, it's an idea, it's a concept, it needs further exploration. But if we're looking to make some changes to make this area more user-friendly, more people-friendly, and try to change the way it's functioned and make it safer to drive too, because potentially eliminating driveways, then we need to explore concepts like this. The one other area I want to talk about before turning it over to Matt is the concept that was developed for the county line crossings area. That's in the northeast portion of the township on the south side of 26 Mile between the freeway and County Line Road. We think this is a very exciting area. We think this area is ripe for development as a mixed-use walkable place. We're calling it County Lines Crossing just as a placeholder name. Maybe it'll hold, maybe it'll change to something else. But the idea here is to really introduce a place where you would feel very comfortable riding your bike walking, parking once, and then exploring, just like you would in a small village or hamlet setting, with a mix of uses. And we actually are, number one, proposing that there would be a new collector road that would run parallel to 26 Mile Road. And it would look something like this, where there would be one lane of traffic in each direction, maybe a center turn lane, a separated bike lane, and then wider sidewalks. And this is a cross section here of what that really looks like. 2-story would be the typical building platform here, and then enough to enclose it and make it feel like a pedestrian space. These are some of the pedestrian amenities at the lower right that we're talking about. It may be something like certain paver types, certain landscape types, introduction of art, introduction of places for people to sit and gather and talk, all of those things that make something a place. And the liner commercial that we're talking about on 26 Mile, it is envisioned that those buildings would be brought close to the roadway. And a precedent image we have of that is some of the new development that's occurred on Big Beaver Road in Troy, Michigan. This was in response to the Big Beaver Corridor Study, which I actually helped them prepare back in the late 1980s. And they're now, back in, I guess it was, no, it was late 19, it was around 2000, as I recall, or 2005, a date slipping me a little bit. But what's happening now is that they're starting to implement that plan on a development by development basis. And what were parking lots are now being turned into commercial development. And the commercial development is very attractive. It has landscape elements. It has areas for outdoor dining. And the parking is in the rear. That would be something that would in fact be the vision along 26 Mile for that. And we developed a concept plan. This is what it would look like. You have here 26 Mile Road on the north, County Line Road on the east, and then the freeway here. Just to kind of walk you through this briefly, mostly office type development closer to the freeway, tech office and office, maybe some research office, a couple of hotels. This would be pretty exciting in order to, and would be best to have closer to the freeway. It would make it so that you could have some workforce development in this area and some additional tax base. And then as we move into this area, we see some commercial, some of the liner commercial with maybe even some green space associated with it, focusing on a courtyard type development. Parking is behind. And then we get into some medical office. This would be an area for a medical office campus kind of in the heart. So that would, I think, go very well with the medical office that's across the street in Lenox Township. And it would enable the township to really have a unique development pattern here that isn't found anywhere else in the general vicinity. We have an area for senior independent housing. We have some, this is kind of an environmentally sensitive area, so this would be open space and possibly some stormwater detention. And then we have opportunities for townhouse type housing that would be up along the roadway. This is that collector road I talked about that would have bike lanes on both sides. And then we have an opportunity here for some interesting missing middle type housing, possibly detached cottage court development where you have, this is really attractive for those in the 50 plus age where kids have grown. They're looking for a detached single family home on a much smaller lot that's a condo where they don't have the maintenance and it fronts on a green space. So you've got an opportunity for that here. And then we have an opportunity for some commercial right at the corner of County Line and 26 Mile fronting on a green space, much like that precedent image I showed you from 23 and Gratiot. And then here, an opportunity for some more office development to mix in. So we really get, and this could end up obviously evolving in several different ways, but the thought behind this is that it's a grid pattern, it's mixed use, the form of development is up against the road, there's lots of trees, there's lots of wide sidewalks, it's a walkable place. And the other great thing about it is that right across the street and down just a few hundred feet is a bike path that will take you down County Line Road and will link into downtown New Baltimore and will ultimately link to the Bridge to Bay Trail heading out to St. Clair County. And then if you go to the north, There's planned connections up County Line Road that'll get you to the Macomb Orchard Trail. So you have an ability to potentially capitalize on some major regional non-motorized transportation improvements that are being made and create a development that would be very attractive to people that want to be near those resources, and then create something that's unique within the community with this type of development. And we think the fact that it's on the freeway, this is the homebound side in the afternoon, which makes it, I think, even more attractive for new retail development on the south side than on the north side. So we're looking at this as a great opportunity once sewer service is available, that this could become a mixed use center. All right, now I'm going to turn it over to Matt Wojciechowski, and he's going to take you through a few more of these area plans.
Awesome. Thank you, Rod. So moving over to the west side, staying on the north end of the township, we took a look at the Northwest District. So that was sort of the west side of Gratiot, 94 there, north of 23. And we looked at some of the existing conditions there, the housing patterns, recognizing that there is still some large agricultural parcels in that northwest corner. So we didn't recommend many changes there, but moving a little bit south, you'll see two areas in red on that map on the right, where we've recommended that blended density for the housing. So on the left side of the page, you'll see a couple of examples of what Rod was talking about earlier. Those are meant to be, so some of those are actually quadplexes. That one in the lower right, would it be intended to be either a duplex, quadplex, but look like a single family home style development. So we were, and as Rod mentioned, being cognizant of where those are placed, maybe on the ends of developments towards the end of the street, maybe. So really looking at where those are placed. And you'll notice those two districts, we chose those two areas as potential higher density, blended density rather, areas because they were adjacent to industrial. Those were the two areas that, that might be a better transition, a little less intrusive on other single family uses. And also that could help with that placemaking with that 23 and Gratiot area, providing a little bit of higher density housing over there, allowing people, with a few additional sidewalk networks to be able to connect into that 23 and Gratiot area and start to make it a little more, bring some foot traffic down into some of those areas without having to cross any of the major roads. So that was some of the improvements that we took a look at as far as that district. And then we're going to shift down to the south, sort of southeast side of the township. I'm going to go over the next 4 focus areas that all sort of overlap in one way or another. Looking at this map, we'll see in purple, we have the Salt River focus area, which took a look at the entire Salt River corridor as far as non-motorized and water amenities. That connects into that marina district right there where it empties out into the bay. As we took a look at the Jefferson corridor as a whole, kind of from the Salt River all the way down to 21 Mile. And then down on the south end, we had another focus area focused more on the commercial aspects on how to revive and get that area with some new development. So starting with, on the next slide, we'll go over some of the changes that we recommended and for the Salt River focus area. We're really highlighting the placemaking elements that we talked about earlier and making people, residents aware of what we have here. And, as far as like a regional amenity goes, and it's mentioned, the Salt River corridor is mentioned a few times in the Macomb County planning, Blue Infrastructure Economic Development Plan. So that's something we really want to continue to highlight. We know that those outdoor activities are gaining in popularity. We just saw the addition of the Weber Paddle Park, as well as the Salt River Nature Center a little bit further upstream. So those are some exciting opportunities that we'd really like to enhance and highlight. And a quick story, I actually this summer was able to get out there for my first time, and I went out there with my parents, with my mom, and we went kayaking out on the Salt River having lived in the area for 20 years, that was our first time out on the river like that. So it was awesome to be able to get out there. I know that she went out there and told her friends about it, and they've been out kayaking. So we saw a lot of activity out there, ice fishing, people utilizing the Weber paddle park to get onto the river to ice fish and ice skate. So we really feel like that, this is a great opportunity to keep advocating for. And as those opportunities present themselves, we'll, like with the grant opportunity where the township was able to acquire some additional riverfront property, those are the types of opportunities we've identified. So between that and the recreation, we feel like that's a great amenity. Moving down, as I mentioned, the Salt River sort of empties out into Anchor Bay right near the Marina District. We took a look at this one, really focusing in on the, we looked at the area, analyzed some of it, and then really looked to the public input on what the township's residents and even the area residents who live outside the township who maybe just use Jefferson to as a corridor to drive through to maybe get up to M59, and what were their perceptions. And we had a lot of comments about what that area looks like from the street. So we've identified that on the left side, that middle image there was a lot of what we heard. Residents and survey respondents mentioned that they just sort of saw that area as exposed outdoor storage. So we identified some elements on the right page on the bottom there that could potentially introduce some screening elements to that area that are a little bit lower in cost and might not entail an entire redevelopment of that site, but could still add some character to the area, maybe slow down traffic a little bit, and make that a little bit more of an identity in that area. So then as we travel down the Jefferson corridor, sticking with that theme of of placemaking, we really wanted to highlight the history between the Salt River, the shoreline, trail. There were some other interesting historical elements that we identified. There's actually an underground railroad bicycle route that memorializes a route that was used to travel from Detroit to Canada. So we thought that was a really interesting tie to Detroit, kind of as Rod hit on that, the Gratiot history, really focusing on that and making the township residents and aware of what's here and using that as a regional draw for the area. As far as the physical improvements we identified, one of the main factors that we noticed and residents noticed in the survey was the lack of defined edges and streetscape. A lot of the developments are set back a little further and lack a defined curb or street frontage. So we've included some elements to address that. And as I mentioned, that southern portion of it of Jefferson, as we get past Cotton, moving towards 21 Mile, is a little bit more commercial focused. So this is another area we identified where some mixed use, some of those hamlet placemaking elements can be introduced, whether that's through building materials or just making sure that developments that come in have proper spacing and really aren't just jamming parking up towards the front of the street and are maybe being a little bit more thoughtful about landscaping and open space near the street to create that streetscape along there. So this ties in really nicely to the complete streets plan because we and many residents identified Jefferson as one of the most desired areas for a bike path. I think that's well known, but what we've done here is we took all of the comments and recommendations and mapped them out, and this is the complete streets plan that we've identified for the township. So you'll see here, it's quite ambitious. It covers all areas of the township, so, north to south, east to west. Realizing that this won't all get built at one time and it won't be just paid for in one lump sum. We realize the importance of getting this in the plan and putting this vision out there so that as developments come in, developers are aware of what's to be expected, that if they're going along one of these routes, they should anticipate putting this infrastructure in or planning for it. And that table on the lower left details where the pathways go, which side of the road they should go on, and which type of treatment is anticipated for that. And then as you move into the plan a little further, each of the roads that was identified there has a little bit more detail about the type of pathway that's envisioned, which side of the road it's on, what the design looks like, to really give some real solid ideas and a vision for what this non-motorized system is going to look like within the township. And we're excited about this because getting this in the plan and getting this implemented, it opens the township up for potential funding opportunities through grants and federal funding and those types of things. So, if any of the bridges over 94 get rebuilt in the next, however long, that they would be able to incorporate these changes into there because they're in the plan. So we're really excited about this one.
I'm going to cover the last couple slides here. Thanks, Matt. Another thing we felt was also important as we talked to the Planning Commission is really doing a little bit of discussion of branding, gateways, and wayfinding. You've worked hard to really develop Chesterfield Township into the community it is, and you want to make it even better and stronger. And we think it's important that people know when they enter the township. Right now, you do have a few signs in place, but we also feel like that could be a more robust program at key locations. And so what's been identified are primary gateways, which are the larger blue circles, secondary gateways, which are in green, and then interchange gateways, which are by the major interchanges. When you get off the interchange, once again, there can be some really excellent opportunities to let people know, hey, you've entered Chesterfield Township. And so there's basically a precedent image concept that's been developed based off your new township sign as you enter the township hall property. And we've kind of modified that a little bit to incorporate other elements. And that could be an opportunity to identify the street that you're on. This is an example. If this was on 23 Mile Road, there would be a little placard at the bottom that identified you're on 23 Mile Road and you're entering the township. And you would change it up, but maintain a prototype. And there would be different sizes depending upon whether you're a primary gateway, a secondary gateway, or an interchange gateway. And it's recognized, and we had discussions at the Planning Commission that this type of enhancement like this is not necessarily inexpensive, and the township's probably not going to be funding this at all of these locations. And it provides for an opportunity for public-private partnerships. And we know other communities have been successful. Once you have a template in place, like a design concept, a lot of times private developers, when they're developing the corner, they may in fact be interested in participating, and they might build it as part of a project as long as you have a design to give them. So it's kind of ready to go, that it's all pre-designed. There may be an opportunity for some funding. There can be some crowdsourced funding that can be used. Many communities are doing that to help fund some of these types of improvements. So we see this as a unique opportunity to kind of show the world that you're proud of who you are, and you want to make sure that when people are in the community, they know they're here. There's a lot of confusion between some of the boundaries, a lot of, particularly when you Google search, you see a lot of Chesterfield addresses get identified as New Baltimore. You have sometimes there's that blurred line between Macomb Township and Chesterfield, and it can be confusing. And by having that identification, I think it's important in letting people know that they've arrived and where they are, and can hopefully lead to continued increased image building for the community. And then this slide shows one of the other key products of the work that's done, and that's the thoroughfare plan and the planned right-of-way plan. This helps to identify the right-of-way that would be necessary on major roadways, so that as the township continues to plan, they know what that is. One of the key changes that we're recommending, most of this is pretty straightforward, but Jefferson in particular has a proposed change. It has been historically planned for 120 feet of right of way. So I guess I'd like you to envision in your mind 120 feet of right of way with a 5-lane wide roadway going down Jefferson. I don't think that would fit very well within that corridor, and I don't think it would necessarily, when you think about many of the users that are close to the road right now, when you think about the shallow depth of property, one of the things that the ZBA is seeing a lot of variance requests, because when you assume that 120 feet of right of way and you have a shallow property, sometimes there's almost no buildable property left when you start to apply setbacks. And so we believe that this is a roadway that could have a little bit of a reduction in the right of way down to 100 feet, which would hopefully reduce some of those ZBA variances and enhance some of the developability of property. The other thing you'll notice is in the upper right-hand corner, you can see this new collector road that's dashed. That's the County Line Crossings collector road that would ultimately connect into the overall system in the northeast corner there and provide for linkages throughout the township. Finally, we talk about implementation. One of the things we want to do is make this a plan that is an action plan. And so we've identified action strategies, and they're characterized as either zoning action items, advocacy action items, capital improvement items, or other. So some things are going to involve spending money. So they're in the capital improvements element. Others are going to be trying to be advocates for things, such as pursuing strategies to help make Chesterfield Township an age-friendly community. That's more of an advocacy item. Whereas zoning items are going to be amending your zoning ordinance so that the types of development that is envisioned can happen. So for example, county line crossings is a very unusual type of development pattern. Right now, you don't really have a zoning classification that fits that. So you're going to need a new zoning district that will enable that to happen. So those are some of the zoning action items. And so one of the things the Planning Commission will do once this has been adopted is they're going to start working with this chart. It goes on pages after page if you look in the master plan, and they're going to identify the lead action person or entity. They're going to identify timeframes. They're going to identify priorities and some potential partners, and they're going to start working with this on a regular basis so that this plan can actually be implemented. So my final slide here is the next steps. And the next steps are, well, this plan has already been, as the Township Board knows, they authorized permission to distribute this to adjacent communities and the required review agencies. It has undergone the 63-day review period, which is required by the Michigan Planning Enabling Act. Tonight, we're having a joint meeting discussion. So the next step after this, if it continues according to plan, would be the Planning Commission would actually conduct a public hearing and possibly adopt the plan. That would be as early as April. And then this will also come back to the Township Board, who also will be asked to adopt the plan. And that could be in either April or May if everything goes according to schedule. So that is a summary of the presentation. And I'm going to stop the share, and then I'm going to turn the host back over to the supervisor. And I'll be happy to try to entertain questions along with the Planning Commission. I'm sure they're anxious to entertain questions as well.
Hello, thank you so much to the Planning Commission, to Rod, Matt, Jonathon Palin. A ton of work, and looking forward to continuing this process. So any questions now? This will be in front of our commissions, the board and the Planning Commission, for maybe a deeper dive. But I will open it up to questions. Down on the right-hand side, you should see a little reactions, and I think you can actually raise a hand there so I can see who to call on, or just give me like one of these. So I will entertain any questions that you may have. Fantastic. Chairman Miller, anything from Trustee Vosberg? You're still
Thank you.
silenced. Okay,
Yeah,
Trustee Joseph.
thank you for this presentation. It's been, I enjoyed it. I always like seeing other people's ideas, and I appreciate this for, I'm sure no one person had the idea. As you said, you discussed it with many people, including I'm sure the Planning Commission and everyone else in the community. I appreciate it. The I was interested in the 26-mile corridor there. How we partner with Lenox Township. And I was just curious, what came first, Lenox development or our ideas, or kind of trying to fit each other's into both? How does that come about?
It's a great question. When we were looking at that particular area, one of the things we do is we study the surrounding area, and then we also study the traffic patterns. I have a pretty strong background in transportation, and so it's something that I tend to look at first. And what I saw was that, and I know from a planning perspective and a marketing perspective, one of the things that is attractive to retail and non-residential development is being on the dominant side of PM peak hour traffic. So when we started looking at the traffic flow on 26-mile road, we found that in the afternoon during the rush hour, most people are going effectively east along I-94, getting off on 26-mile and heading east. That's the predominant flow of traffic. So if I was going to open up a grocery store, if I was going to open up any kind of restaurant catering to dinner crowd, I would want to be on the south side of 26-mile road, because people can turn right in and then turn right out and continue on their way. I can capture that traffic that's already there. And so we looked at that property and said, wow, I know there's retail on the other side. You've obviously got Meijer, you have some restaurants, although notice you've got Tim Hortons, which is catering to the westbound morning traffic. Okay, so they're capturing that flow in the morning. So that's a perfect place for a breakfast restaurant. And you also have some medical development happening there. And there could be another user. I know we think there is at least one user that's interested in being in Chesterfield on the south side. And you can build upon that and build kind of a medical hub in that general area. So you're working in tandem with what's already happening in Lenox Township. But at the same time, you're looking at the unique opportunities within Chesterfield Township. So we said, given all those conditions that are in place, and given what we've heard from the public and what we've heard from the Planning Commission, that there's this strong desire for non-motorized facilities and for walkability, this would be the perfect place to build the spot that people think of as almost like I hate to use the word downtown, but it's the place that people identify in Chesterfield as having that, okay, we're going to go there and have an event, or we're going to go there and meet up with friends, and we're going to walk around. We're going to park our car once, and there's so much to do there. We're just going to go and walk, or we're going to ride our bike there. And we started to look at those linkages, and particularly with the pathway that's already up the east side of County Line Road coming up from New Baltimore, and the opportunities to connect. And it said, this should be a mixed use development. This should be an area, you're right by the freeway too. So you're able to capture the freeway traffic. So that's attractive to certain office users, to technology users. You could end up having a development that really buzzes, so to speak, because you could have workers there during the day. They would help support those restaurants. Then you could have people living there. They could also help support retail and restaurants. And then you've got development that's already across the street, and there could be support for that as well. So it really starts to create a very unique hub. But it would be very different in terms of the development pattern on the south side. I think it wouldn't necessarily compete in the same way. On the north side, it's something different. On the south side, it would be much more walkable. So they would complement each other, but also offer different product types to the market.
Okay, thank you. And anything you can do to, any of us can do to fix the identity of Chesterfield and New Baltimore and the 2 zip codes would be a wonderful thing if we can ever accomplish that.
Implement this plan and you'll see it happen.
Trustee Joseph.
Thank you. I'd like to pick up where Trustee Vosberg left off. I know as the projects were going in on M59, specifically the Cabela's, there was a lot of marketing research that was done. And you start to blend identities and confusion, as she's talking about on the north end of the township with the New Baltimore. Obviously, one post office and zip codes, being the same makes it a very difficult. But in terms of even trying to access, like everybody uses their um, GPS type systems, and you get into the south end of the township, and you could have the same roadway, referred to as M59, Hall Road, Vietnam Veterans Memorial Highway, Russo Highway, and it gets very, very confusing. So I did when the gateway and wayfinding issue came out, and there were primary, secondary, interchange gateway discussions with signage and making sure that people knew, in essence, where you were in the township, because there was some indication, highlighting that. The issue of cost was something that was discussed a bit, and I was wondering if there has been any sort of bundling, a total cost. Obviously, it's something that is done through multiple entities, but did we ever put a cost associated with adoption of the plan and then implementation of the primary, secondary, and interchange gateways? Do we know what that would cost?
That's good question. The answer to that is not at this time. However, that's really what the capital improvements program helps to do. So what we would like to see, and what I think would be the best practice from a planning perspective, is once this plan is adopted, the next step would be to do a number of different things. But one of the implementation items would be is next time it's the annual capital improvements program update, then some of these capital ideas that are in the master plan would get studied further. There would be some costs associated with them. And if it's something that the township sees as a township responsibility, then there would be an amount associated with that. If it's going to match a grant or match another fund, then that share would be in the capital improvements program, and it would be identified that other money would come from elsewhere. But with the signs in particular, because you brought that up, I know you had some great comments about that when you were on the Planning Commission. We see this as an opportunity as the implementation for a couple things to happen. One is to develop some sign design concepts for the 3 different sizes that we're talking about, so that we know what those need to look like when they're constructed. Have those basically ready to distribute. And then look at different ways to fund it. So that might be a multiple prong approach. The township might fund some of the key ones that they think are important and want to go in right away. We would look when development comes in at the corners where these are planned to see if we can get participation from the development community. We can say, here's our master plan. This is planned to be here. This is what it would look like. This is the size. This is approximately what it would cost. Would you be interested in adding that? And I've seen many communities, I've worked with communities that have been successful. As a matter of fact, I used to be the planner in New Haven, and the sign that's in front of the McDonald's there on Gratiot that says "Welcome to New Haven," that's a brick sign, that was put in because I had a concept for it. I showed it to McDonald's. I said, would you consider putting this in? And they constructed it as part of the McDonald's when it went in. And same thing in Novi. When I worked in Novi, there were a number of corners where we worked with communities to do that. So I've had experience doing that elsewhere. I know other communities have seen it happen. And sometimes it's a matter of just asking. Sometimes it's partnering, maybe offering incentives in order for that to happen. But I see it being funded from multiple sources.
And then as a follow-up, kind of keeping with the funding, the Complete Streets recommendations. And I know that we've incorporated some, like once the master plan is adopted, then a lot of things flow from that, including ordinance construction or revising ordinance. So we've had some changes with our non-motorized path, and there's been a long-standing interest in seeing some connectivity happen with a lot of the, gaps in pedestrian walkways, and ordinances sort of followed along with that. So now businesses that are looking to make major improvements to their site or create new businesses, new development have an added obligation to include sidewalks, for example. So that was a result of what the township saw as the future and connectivity, and then ordinance followed that. And I think there will be a rapid a period of time between the adoption of the master plan and then the revision of the ordinance to reflect the complete streets recommendations. Of course, you'll hear from the development community. There are a number of developments that are fully capable of incorporating things like McDonald's, for example. And they want it to be a part of the sign. But I know other planning commissioner members, along with myself, were really stuck in terms of trying to help a business get off the ground and then not adding so much additional financial burden to them, that their project became undoable. And it's a constant balance that the planning commissioners try to reach when you see a petitioner come forward with a project idea, and they really are almost all in financially. It's everything they can do to get their business concept off the ground. And then we say things like, the screening or the fencing or we want to have a township that, looks a certain way, and the aesthetics typically bring a price tag. So I think it's something, and I was wondering if you could comment in terms of advice to the board members when we start looking at adopting ordinance changes to be in compliance with the complete streets recommendation. What's a good guidepost in terms of balancing onerous restrictions on businesses that are not able to to complete their project with some of the grand ideas that we have?
Another really good question. So I'll answer that in two different ways. If we're talking about something like gateway signage, that's something that's more of it'd be really nice to have that there. So we may do it by asking, okay? And then if they can't afford it, they say no. Another option would be, I would like to explore building in some incentives so that if you build that sign, you may not have to do something else on the site. You might get a break from something that costs money on the site if you help the township out by building a certain improvement, meaning the gateway sign. So that would end up being something maybe close to a wash so that it doesn't become an increased burden. So that could be something to explore. I'm not exactly sure how that's all going to play out, but those are some things we would do. In terms of non-motorized improvements, I think there's a general expectation, and whenever I've talked to developers about things like sidewalks and bike paths, they basically all just want to be treated in a similar way. So if the rule is, if you're going to develop in Chesterfield Township and you're fronting on a road that's planned to have a bike path, you've got to build that segment of the bike path that's across your frontage. And if it's a sidewalk, you've got to build the sidewalk that's across your frontage. And if everybody has that same expectation and it's a requirement of the ordinance, then the market tends to adjust to that. And typically I find that the development community, what they don't want is to be singled out to pay for something that others aren't paying for. They want to have kind of be competing on a same cost basis in terms of development. And I think that would be the key, is to identify up front that that's going to be a cost of the development, and to make it so that it's something that's tied to a plan and then implement it. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up, Rod. I think it does. I guess the equivalent, the parity among developers gets a little bit difficult when you look at some of the bigger developments that go in. That in order to facilitate the construction, they need say major infrastructure improvements, whether it's water, power. So there are like some serious gaps, particularly in the south end, where we're going to be kind of shut down in terms of being able to do things significantly larger without an increased power grid, like the power supply. So then the developer now really has to make a decision. Do they have enough within the budget to enhance a power grid, which would really be something that services the whole community? The whole community benefits when a massive amount of power is brought online, or something Supervisor Acavetti's talked a lot about in the northwest and northeast, which is water and sewer. So what's the fairness for the developer to put all of that in when they bring in a big development, or the shared idea? It's the same for everybody. If it's not there, nobody gets started. And especially when you're talking about the great ideas on the county line crossing. That is definitely below ground up development. That's going to require massive amounts of infrastructure. So how do you get off the ground? And it's something that I think we have to look at in terms of the capital improvement, because without a public-private partnership, I don't know how those things get going. It's a lot
totally
easier
agree.
when you're talking about the liner retail and taking advantage of trends where the parking lot is not as necessary, and you shrink that and you backfill, in essence, businesses, and you make that walkable. Those are sort of redevelopment concepts. But where there's nothing and you have to bring in power and water and sewer, it's a different animal. So it's very tricky, and something I think we as a board and future boards need to be mindful of in terms of what we are requiring developers to bring in. Is their cost of putting something in. But just wanted to close by saying thanks to the Planning Commission members. It's great to see you all. This is something that I think Trustee Demink was involved with when he was the planning liaison 5 years ago. They were trying to get this master plan to the board, and creating a special meeting to actually see it in total was most deserved. So to board members that haven't been a part of planning in a liaison capacity or attended a lot of meetings, I can tell you that the commission members do an awful lot of work, and it's a great group of people, and I was really proud to serve there, and I appreciate your presentation tonight.
Thank you. Trustee Demink.
Like to Rod and Matt and Jonathan, everybody on the Planning Commission, and David for your work on this. I think it's a great plan. It's time we move forward with this. Like I said, as David said, it started way back in my tenure, and then David took it over the last 4. So thank you, and I think it's going to be a great plan.
Thank you.
Any further trustee or treasurer Elliott?
I want to thank you thank you to all that are involved for the hard work that you guys put in. As you were talking, I did go into the interactive piece from our website, and that was really neat to see how that works. So
Good.
yeah, thank you. And then I have 3 questions. So as you were going through, I was looking at page 128, and it was the sidewalk survey results. And it said 81% of the responses said that lack of sidewalks and bike paths is a major challenge for the township. Who responded on that?
Is that you're talking about the survey?
Yep.
Yeah, that there were approximately 290 people that responded from throughout the township. So it was a wide range of folks that had that available, and so that's who responded. If that's what you're referring to, yes.
Yes, thank you. And then on page 132, it says that you also, just to go a little bit further into the sidewalks and connected paths, it refers to the 2014 County Parks and Recreation Plan. Macomb County adopted a countywide non-motorized network plan known as the Mobilize Macomb.
Yes.
That looked very interesting. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Well, one of the things we try to do when we're doing a non-motorized plan is we want to take advantage of the work that's being done countywide. And that Mobilize Macomb non-motorized plan was a significant effort on behalf of Macomb County to try to establish a framework for connectivity from community to community. So we looked at that and made sure that the plan that is in your draft master plan is consistent with the recommendations. And for example, 21 Mile, I know, was one of the key east-west corridors identified in Mobilize Macomb. So we made sure that we had a pathway along 21 Mile that would tie into that. So we coordinated with those efforts.
Great, thank you. Yes, I see that. That's great. Great work. Then the third question I have is, are we changing or is there any addition in single family residence, or has any of that changed in the land use?
The changes are highlighted in the plan. Effectively, what we've done is we've tweaked some of the single family areas. We've made some modifications. I know, for example, Matt described the blended residential. That was one of them, where we're incorporating kind of a mix there. And then some other districts we took a look at, and there were some modest changes to different density levels based upon looking at what the build out of the community will be, its proximity to other non-residential uses. So it's all highlighted in the plan in the land use section, where it describes the changes from the previous plan, and it goes through and tells you exactly what those are.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Any further comments from Clerk Berry?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I have to say just a couple of things that came to mind. I had made some notes on, and based on what some other of the board members had mentioned, I don't think I've seen a time in recent memory since I've been on the board since 2012 that developers are ready to invest as much as they are now. And I think by giving them this direction, I think we can really foster those public-private partnerships. And I really like that aspect of this plan. I think that people are willing to do a lot if they just know what to do. They just need to be told what to do and be given some guidance there. So I'm anxious to see, or I was happy to see, and I'm anxious to see who takes advantage of those public-private partnerships. And I'm, being a former business owner myself and investing in other communities back in the past, I can say that even those who maybe struggle to get businesses open, I know what it takes to do that, and it is considerably intensive from a capital perspective. But when you do invest in some of those areas that would perhaps see one of these public-private partnerships, like with the signs or with any other, aesthetic elements, when you are on those parcels or in those areas, there is additional value that you are going to recognize from being, highly noticed in the community. It tends to elevate your profile a little bit, which ultimately generates more revenue if your business is properly marketed and branded to make sense with that. So I think that while I'm certainly sensitive that some of that could be burdensome, I think there's that most business owners or developers that would look at something like that are going to recognize the other intrinsic value that there is an capital value as well in making those investments. So I'm hopeful to see that. Some of the other things that I really liked about this plan, and I had seen elements of it in the past, and very excited for the concentration on aesthetics as well as functionality to maximize value, because you only have so much land. So you want to make sure to maximize your value, not only in terms of tax base, but also in terms of quality of life and character of the community. So I think that this plan does this. I love the hamlets idea. I think that's wonderful. I really like what the plan is with the waterfront. I know that's been a long time coming. Everyone has been wanting to see something more done in the waterfront district. And I think that this plan helps to accomplish that as well. The emphasis on lifestyle, where it's comfortable and active, but it's also upscale as well. So I think that it fits well with the current configuration of our residents and our demographics, but I think it also allows for improvement and a progressive evolution of the complexion of what Chesterfield might end up looking like. So I like that as well. Maximizing the opportunities for created amenities that are also complementing the natural existing elements and amenities that we have here. I think that does that as well. That's the other thing that I like about this plan, and I think makes it very saleable, very marketable, and very accommodating for our current existing residents as well as incoming residents as well. I think that it makes Chesterfield an appealing place to be. Was very excited to hear from you that the residents that live here currently want to continue to live here. As things change in their lives and as they move through the phases of life, they want to continue residency here. And I think that is an important point to note, that we're moving the right direction. And I think that this plan continues that. So I was very pleased to see that. And the last thing though, and I don't want to say this is a question, but it's just a concern or something that I'd like to make note, is that I think that as we move forward with this plan, or the additional, what this plan will end up being when it grows up, when it kind of, we tweak it up a little bit here prior to final adoption, if we make any changes, is that I think it's important that we ensure that we have, and that we can demonstrate ongoing improvements and ongoing progress with an identified timeline. I think there's nothing more frustrating for people than seeing something so wonderful and saying, getting very excited about all the opportunities. And then you have developers looking at it from, planning to ask questions about how to start taking advantage of all of these wonderful things that we're going to put out there, then nothing happens. And I think people get very frustrated with that, because we've gotten everyone so excited and then they don't see things materializing. So I think it's important as we move forward that that's why I like the action plan that you had. I think that was tremendous. I don't know if that's a staple in all of the presentations that you do, or but I think it's an important element to have, because we need to be able to demonstrate not only to our current residents and stakeholders, but also those who are looking to invest here, to move here. We need to be able to demonstrate that, yes, we have this great plan. We also have an implementation program to go along with it, and that we need to be very mindful of staying with that. So even if it's every 6 months, every year, someone is seeing something change. So I think that's going to become critical. And those are the observations that I had today. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent.
Any further comments from the board or planning commission members? Mr. Klonowski. And then
I'd like to congratulate the planning commission. And I came in a little late on this. I've just been appointed late. Basically, it was already done. Like to say they did a great job. Giffels and Webster did a fantastic job, as well as the Chesterfield planning department. I do have a question. These hamlet styles, Ron, can we put those in other areas in the township where they would fit? Can you envision that?
I think potentially. I would say that, one of the things about a master plan is, by state law, you have to revisit it every 5 years. And I could see moving forward with some of these hamlet recommendations, and if they start to take off and we see them taking off, that we may want to take another look at where other hamlets could potentially develop. So yes, I think that's something that should be monitored. And if that's a success story, we might as well grow it.
Thank you.
Mr. Leonard, and I muted you because we had some background noise, so unmute yourself again, please.
Just briefly, I've been involved with this master plan right from the beginning when we first started talking about it, and with Paul and a few others. So it's 7 years ago when we kind of started, I think 6, 7 years ago. Anyways, it's been a long time coming, and I'm glad we're at this point today. It's nice to be almost there. So feel good about it, and I'm glad we're here. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? Mr. Miller?
Yes, this project has been going on for a long time, and, we're all excited about it. I hope that we can have a few meetings this year where we can talk about them instead of, we only had 11 meetings last year because of coronavirus. So I'm hoping that we can get together and have the public hearing and get some of this stuff implemented. Rod, you and Matt did a good job.
Thank you, sir.
Ralph, Mr. Jareski.
Yeah, thank you. Great presentation. From my perspective, I listened to everyone and what they spoke about consistency and a progressive path moving forward. One thing I would like to see from the township board as well as the planning commission is just consistency and some structure when we're bringing new businesses into Chesterfield. I know there's a lot of land that has to be that there is yet to be developed. We have some really good assets, the Salt River, and as well as the waterfront. But we really kind of, as a group here, need to kind of, I wouldn't say up our game, but understand it. Chesterfield's got a lot to offer. We're located easy on, easy off freeways to get in and out and go to work every day. We've got the waterfront, the Salt River land. But when on the planning commission, we're often challenged when businesses want to come here, and we're challenged from signage, we're challenged from sidewalks, and we're challenged just, the businesses kind of say, we want to come here, but you're prohibitive with your ordinances and your regulations. But as a group, I don't think we are. I think we, like other Macomb Township, in the other surrounding communities, that's just the price of doing business in the place where we live. And I think as a group that we just need to stick to our guns, stick to the master plan, and not deviate from those rules and regulations just to bring businesses here. I think in the big picture, by creating that atmosphere, we're going to be creating a lot of value for people that will want to come here. So again, nice job, Rod and Matt. Planning Commission, I enjoyed the whole process, especially the open houses and listening to everyone. I know the people that I speak with, we need sidewalks and we need them fast. We've got a lot of assets and we can't get there. I live in the Sugar Bush Farms here, and I can't even get to the township center, which I can see from my backyard. So I would like to see that an aggressive path to create some paths. So thanks for the opportunity to speak.
Mr. Renaud.
Just real quick, I want to throw again, Matt, Rod, great job on that. And if anyone on the board was wondering if hiring these guys was a good idea, I just want to confirm, yes, they've been a great resource. And they've really helped push this master plan project forward. It's been great working with them. And I just wanted to say thank you. I've been waiting for this day since the day I was appointed. So it's great to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from the board or the planning commission? Thanks a ton. Huge lift, a lot of time. Rod, Matt, Chairman Miller, the entire planning commission, and Jonathon Palin, who's right in the middle of my screen here. He does so much work behind the scenes in the entire team. So thank you, thank you, thank you. We're going to move on to item number 7, which is the public comments. Clerk Barry, have there been any public comments submitted?
There have been no public comments submitted on this agenda item.
Moving on to item number 8, board comments. Any board members wish to address the board? I will have one update I need to share with the board. There's been a change, and we have a decision to make here moving forward, and a couple different options for our meetings moving forward. The governor did relax and allow indoor gatherings, which would allow us to meet in person with some caveats. 25 members with an overflow place probably in our senior center like we did all last summer. Or we have the option until at least April 1st, maybe even April 14th, to continue the Zoom platform. The agenda did go out for the next meeting with, I believe, in person, Clerk Barry. I saw that came today. I didn't see the changer. So I would like some discussion on that from the board members, or at least some input from you, if I could. Clerk Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Because indoor meetings, as you pointed out, were allowed, we did send out the agenda with that as a plan. However, for myself, I appreciate the Zoom meetings. I know sometimes they can become kind of all sick of them, but I think maybe for the month of March, continuing the Zoom meetings, I would be completely fine with that. And then starting off in April with the in-person meetings. I don't have a preference. Well, I have a preference. I wouldn't mind sticking with Zoom for the month of March, but I'm of course fine either way. And currently we're planning in the next meeting to be in person. So we can certainly change that depending on what the board
I'd like
chooses
to
to do.
add this to the discussion too. So I did get a call from our legal counsel Siebert, and he said it's kind of a gray area. You know, so he checked around neighboring communities, and I've talked to a lot of other supervisors. If you got the mechanism to stream and to have an overflow room, but it's very clear that he said most of his clients are sticking with non-Zoom, and some communities are going in Zoom, but they have these big technology things. He kind of was leaning us towards staying under the Zoom platform. I was, you know, kind of dying to get back in person, and that's kind of where we're at. And we can still repost onto that Zoom platform. Any other comments? And I guess we don't have to discuss it right now as a team fully. And but some input on that to the clerk's office and myself would be good before, you know, by tomorrow, so we can see how we're going to do that next meeting, which is March the 9th, a week from yesterday. Trustee Joseph.
I know you're not asking for a vote and you're looking for some clarity just from board members. I like the idea of being in person, and I'm curious to know from a technological standpoint, did we run into difficulties? I know it got a little bit confusing. You know, when we did sort of, for most of our COVID period, we were operating under a real kind of hybrid type. We were doing in person. Some board members would participate, you know, remotely. And I thought, you know, I know that, again, it got a little bit challenging, but it seemed to give board members the freedom to do, you know, what they felt most safe with. Could we return to that format and allow board members who are you know, more comfortable, you know, appearing remotely? The challenge that I have is the opportunity for the residents to, you know, participate. It's very difficult. You know, I got some feedback from some individuals who are, you know, frustrated with their comments not reaching the clerk's office, or you know, how to do that. I know everything is being done as possible to get, you know, information on how to get those clear, but also in terms of you know, I think there's been some comments that have been made where the participant feels like they're not being accurately, you know, quoted, or things are being left out, and an in-person meeting certainly clear that up. So, you know, my vote is let's get back and let's let the people participate, you know, with their government. So I guess the only question I had, Mr. Supervisor, is can we adopt a hybrid? Can we have individuals who aren't feeling safe or would prefer to be remote continue to do that, and also have in person?
It's feasible. It does create problems with two people in the same room fighting for the same microphone.
I see.
But I think we worked that out pretty good on the throughout the last year. I will get with Attorney Siebert tomorrow,
Okay.
and I'm sure that we have that flexibility to do that. The issue is going to be with by the time the entire board comes, the support staff, the folks recording. There's not a lot of room left in here for many audience members, so I think there's going to leave us like maybe 10 to 12 seats. And Bob's concern was if you have this big event, then you could potentially put yourself in a problem. So either way, it's coming soon. Either next meeting, the meeting after, or it's right around the corner with what you see going on in the world. Just wanted to point that out for next meeting because I've got concerns on both ends, and I saw that the meeting was posted being in person, and I'm sure that Clerk Barry will decide that tomorrow once we get a little bit more input. Trustee Elliott.
Treasurer Elliott.
Oh, Treasurer Elliott, I'm sorry.
So if you have, say, you have room for 10 people and the 11th person comes, what would we do in that situation? Do we have those types of logistics? Because I'd surely, hate to see somebody drive expecting to be able to come in and then we're in a little bit of a
It'd be an
tough.
overflow situation, so they'd be down in the senior center with a live stream version of the meeting. And they'll be able to walk in, go to the podium, and either take someone's spot. It could happen from a logistical standpoint, so this would take a little bit of work.
So one last quick suggestion, Mr. Supervisor, perhaps a lot of times I notice that we get very good participation from department heads. They come, I'm assuming it must be mandatory if they have an agenda item, they're always there, but oftentimes we have department heads that have no agenda item, they're just there in case. And maybe what we could do with the department heads is just allow them the opportunity to remote in and save that space for what Treasurer Elliott is talking about, which is somebody coming in to participate. Very rarely do we have in excess of 25 people that are there to participate, unless it's a hot button issue. But I'll forward an email to the clerk and CC the rest of the board with some other comments. But appreciate the invitations to weigh in on this.
Clerk Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Just wanted to point out to the board that MTA states that we still have to offer a virtual option, even if we meet in person. There's been a couple emails that have been out there on that from MTA. So, we can still have a virtual option, as Trustee Joseph was indicating. Perhaps it's some sort of a blended situation. I just want to let you know that there is a couple MTA bulletins out on that.
Okay, any further board comments? And we'll gather some more information on that. And Clerk Barry, I'm sure will get that figured out by tomorrow. And I think that hybrid option might be a good route to go. I'm in this room, regardless. So, item number 9 is adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Clerk Barry to adjourn, support by Trustee Vosberg. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed by saying nay. Thank you all. Have a great, safe evening. We are adjourned at 7:33 p.m.
Bye all.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.